Hi everybody. So Game of Thrones finally ended with the last episode and I'm here to talk about it. I think that this episode is better than the fifth one, but it's still not good. But let's start with the good things of the episode, which are not that much. The first thing that I want to say is that visually the episode is great, and Benioff and Weiss did a really good job as directors of this episode, but not as writers. Especially in the first part of this episode, we have really good shots, and also in the end, we have really good scenes visually. But the writing of this episode still have problems. A scene that I really enjoyed was when Tyrion finds the bodies of Cersei and Jaime. It's really emotional, and also another scene with Tyrion that is really interesting is the one with Jon. Their dialogue is, I think, well written, but still, Jon is one of the worst characters of this season, but we'll talk about it later. Another scene that I really enjoyed was the monologue of Daenerys. Visually, it's great, and it really represents how Daenerys became what she always wanted to defeat. And I was really enjoying this first part of this episode, but after this scene, I started to see big problems. The last good scene I want to talk about is the one when Brienne writes about Jaime in his page, and this is a really emotional scene. In fact, Brienne is one of the only characters that had a really good evolution in this show, and also a good conclusion. But now let's talk about the bad things of this episode, which are a lot. The first thing that I did not like about this episode was the fact that the cruelty of Daenerys lasts only 20 minutes. In fact, she should be the last enemy, but her threat is resolved too quickly, and we didn't really see what were the consequences of what she did. The fact that Jon kills her is good, but it wasn't really emotional. In fact, their love story is quite bad as shown in this last season, and probably this is caused also by the fact that the actors are not that good, and they don't give really power to the scene. Another big problem of this season is the fact that they wanted to rush to the finale, and this is the worst problem of this season, and it reflects to everything, the characters and the story. For example, the evolution of the characters is too quick, and also what happens in this season isn't that bad, but the problem is how it happens. Another problem of this season is that everything that we saw in 7 seasons is useless. Nothing really matters in this season. The characters don't care of what happened, and this season looks like out of context. An example of this is the revelation of parents of Jon. The fact that he is a Targaryen is useless in this season. It doesn't have real consequences, and the only thing that we can think is Daenerys being jealous of him. But in general, the character of Jon is useless, and his final is disappointing. I think that going in the north, it should have been his choice, not something imposed by others. Another example of how they rushed the finale is the lack of dialogues. In fact, there could have been a lot of interesting dialogues. For example, between Sansa and Yara about Theon, Gendry and Arya, Tyrion and Sansa. There are a lot of dialogues that we didn't see, and it's really disappointing because it was one of the most important things of Game of Thrones, the dialogues. But now let's talk about what happens after that Daenerys died. One thing that is really stupid is Bran accepting the throne after he refused Winterfell. It seems a choice out of character. In fact, he has no interest in the throne, and if a person doesn't want to be king, how can he make good choices for the people? It's a real nonsense. And in particular, the second part of the episode is really bad and doesn't really give a good final to the story. Okay, the Iron Throne is destroyed, but there is still a king, and it didn't change anything from the first season, because after 100 years we can imagine that there will be a lot of killing for the throne, and it's really anticlimactic for the final of Game of Thrones. And this also reflects to the message of Game of Thrones, which is stupid, because if we think about it, it looks like that every character is similar to their parents, and there is no way to change what they are. For example, Tyrion is similar to Tywin, Daenerys is similar to Aerys, so there isn't really a way to change what we are, and if the parents of a character are bad, there is no escape. He will be a bad character, and this is a really bad message. Also, the title of the book that Sam gives to Tyrion, A Song of Ice and Fire, is nonsensical with the show, because in this season there is no ice and no fire, because the Night King died too quickly, and Daenerys destroys a city, but we don't see the consequences of what she did, and the person that should be the protagonist of A Song of Ice and Fire, who is Jon, is relegated to the north and treated like an useless character. So the final was really disappointing, and it was the worst season of whole Game of Thrones. But let me know what you think about this episode, and I will make a review of the whole 8th season. And if you liked this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and ciao!